Mentioned just a moment ago, I'm going to be talking all about working the ham radio satellites tonight. And if I hope to give a comprehensive overview of satellite operating. I'm not going to try to go too deep into the weeds. If anybody has any questions, by all means, just jump in and ask a question if there's something that you have a question about. I will try to pause at various points throughout the presentation to make sure that people can ask questions if they wish. And I'll try to save a little time at the end for questions as well. So satellite operating is an extremely fun portion of the hobby. There are about 25 satellites that are in orbit right now that you can communicate through. Most of the satellites that are in orbit today are what are known as CubeSats. These are small 10-centimeter cubes with a whip antenna off of one end, one side of them. Most of the satellites that are in orbit are in what they call low Earth orbit. That's around 500 or 600 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. On average, any given satellite will pass overhead about 6 times a day, and the average length of a pass is about 15 minutes. There are a couple of basic terms that we need to understand when we're talking about satellite operating. One is called AOS, which is known as acquisition of signal. That's when the satellite first pops up over the horizon. And then there's another term, LOS, loss of signal, and that's when the satellite drops down over the horizon, below the horizon at the end of a pass. Most satellites operate on 2 meters, a combination of 2 meters and 70 centimeters. Some satellites you transmit or uplink to the satellite on 2 meters and receive on 70 centimeters. Other satellites are exactly the opposite. You transmit on 70 centimeters and you listen or downlink on 2 meters. AO91 is a very popular FM satellite right now. You uplink to the satellite on 70 centimeters and you receive the satellite on 2 meters. Most satellites that are in orbit transmit back to Earth using less than a watt of power. And you don't need a whole lot of power to operate satellites. 5 watts with a gain antenna is quite powerful for most satellite stations. So why would you even want to do this? If you're active in other parts of the hobby, or maybe you're new to satellite operating, or you're new to ham radio, why would you want to get involved with satellites? There are a lot of great reasons why. First off, satellite operating is extremely accessible to the amateur community. It is open to all license classes, including technicians, because technicians have full privileges on 2 meters and 70 centimeters. So you can have full access to 98% of the satellites that are currently in orbit. Satellite operating is extremely reliable. You don't have to worry about whether there's been a solar flare to use the satellites. It is completely unaffected by terrestrial propagation fluctuations. If the satellite is overhead where you are located and you have decent equipment and can access the satellite, you can use satellites all you want. Satellite passes are extremely predictable. They can be known well in advance. So a satellite pass is easy to fit in your work schedule or your home schedule, your family schedule, any other commitments. You can know plenty of time in advance when there's going to be a satellite pass, and you can take advantage of it. And because satellite passes are no more than 15 to 20 minutes long, it's a nice bite-sized amount of time that you can budget into your schedule to do ham radio. Satellite operating is extremely diverse. You can use voice, you can use Morse code, you can use any number of digital modes and communicate via satellite. So no matter what aspect of the hobby you're interested in or what modes you enjoy communicating with, you can do that over satellite as well. Satellite operating can be extremely portable. Some of the FM satellites can be accessed using just an HT and a handheld Yagi, like you see in this picture off to the side. This is my friend Doug, N6UA. He's operating using a couple of Yaesu 817s and a handheld Yagi antenna and transmitting from a nice juicy grid out in Wyoming. Because it's so portable, it's very easy to take with you on vacation or a business trip. So it's very compact and it's very effective, even at such a compact and portable station size. And finally, it's an extremely satisfying part of the hobby. There are plenty of technical challenges. I mean, you're trying to communicate through an orbiting cube that's 600 kilometers above the sky, traveling at about 17,000 miles an hour. So there's a bit of a challenge in being able to access that. There are plenty of operating awards. Most operating awards that you can get via terrestrial propagation, DXCC, worked all states, all of those things, those are all available on satellite as well. And because it's so portable, it gives you a lot of opportunity to go out and activate rare grid squares and be the sought after station. A lot of satellite operators chase Maidenhead grid squares, which, if you're not familiar with a grid square, it's a square unit of geography that is 2 degrees of longitude wide by 1 degree of latitude tall. And there are about 38,000 grid squares all across, all around the world. And there are about 488 in the 48 contiguous United States. Lots of people try to collect all of those grid squares and make contact with as many of them as possible. And finally, the satellite community is really tight knit. If you think amateur radio is very easy to make friends, the satellite community is a very tight knit group and very open to sharing and training new people who are expressing interest in satellite operating. So if you're looking for an aspect of the hobby that's very social, the satellite community is a very social group and very welcoming. So what exactly can you work on a satellite? In order to talk about that, you need to understand about a satellite's footprint. So a footprint is the area of coverage of a satellite as it is passing overhead. Anybody who is within the footprint of the satellite can communicate to anybody else that is within that footprint. Footprint sizes are going to vary from satellite to satellite. On average, a satellite's footprint will range from about 6,000 kilometers from one side to the other. Oscar 7 has a footprint of about 8,000 kilometers. So that is the largest footprint in all of the currently orbiting satellites. The interesting thing about the footprint is that as the satellite is moving across the sky, the area of coverage of that satellite is constantly changing. So stations that you hear at the beginning of a pass may drift out of the footprint by the end of the pass, and stations who were not in the footprint at the beginning of a pass will come into the footprint as the pass progresses. So the target of people that you can talk to that are within the footprint is constantly changing. You can work all states via satellite in about 85% of the country. Extreme northeastern New England is out of luck, I'm afraid, in terms of getting to Hawaii. It's just too far for the maximum range of the satellite's capabilities that we currently have in orbit. However, I did do some research, and Western Pennsylvania and Eastern Ohio is about 8,000 kilometers away from Hawaii. So it is possible for you, where you are located in that general part of the country, to make contact with Hawaii. And so you would be able to work all states via satellite. And there's also the opportunities to work real DX. Central and South America stations are available on various passes every day. You're a little further east than I am here in Illinois, so you have more opportunities to work Europe as well as Eastern Europe and Scandinavia. There's a fair amount of footprint that will access Africa, especially the northern portion of Africa. So Morocco and Algeria, stations in that area are possible from where you are located. And there are plenty of stations, plenty of DXCC entities in South America and the Caribbean that would be possible to work if only there were active operators in those countries in Central America and the Caribbean. So if you're planning a DXpedition down to the Caribbean anytime soon, I would encourage you to consider taking satellite gear, because you would be very, very popular among the satellite community. Countries that are very common on the HF bands, such as most of the countries in the Caribbean, a lot of them are extremely rare on the satellites, simply because there are not any active operators that live on those islands. Those islands only come on the air when a foreigner visits for holiday or for a contest expedition, for example, and take satellite gear with them. So a lot of the common countries in Central and South America are very, very rare on satellite. So you could be very popular. And as I mentioned earlier, as a lot of hams like to collect contacts with all 50 states or as many DXCC countries as they possibly can, a lot of satellite operators focus on the Maidenhead grid squares, and they try to make contact with as many different grid squares as they possibly can. So there are two basic types of satellites that are available. There are FM satellites and there are linear satellites. The FM satellites, you can think of an FM satellite as basically an orbiting repeater. It's a single channel device. Only one station can communicate over the satellite at a time. If you're familiar with the capture effect, that is in full play on FM satellites. So the loudest signal is captured by the satellite's receiver, and that is the signal that is rebroadcast on the satellite's downlink frequency. AO91 is a common satellite for FM. SO50 is another great FM satellite that's been around for almost 20 years now and is still going strong. AO27 is an FM satellite that is very easy to access, but it has been around for quite a while and was actually silent for several years. And some folks managed to bring it back to life earlier this year by re-uploading the code that the satellite uses. And it's active, but it's limited and it's only available for about 4 minutes a pass. But it's an extremely loud satellite for those 4 minutes. So that's one to consider trying as well. Linear satellites are, those are the satellites that you can use sideband and CW on. And those satellites have what is known as a transponder, which provides actual bandwidth that you can tune across and hear multiple stations simultaneously. It functions just like tuning across 20 meters. So if you're familiar with tuning across 20 meters, you hear several stations within 50 kilohertz. That's exactly what a linear satellite functions like. RS-44 is a great linear satellite that's just been up a couple of years now and is a great performer. The CAS-4A and 4B satellites are Chinese satellites. They are exceptional performers as well. And then there's a series of 6 Chinese satellites that are known as the XW series. And those have smaller footprints than some of the others, but they're very easy to access and they're very, very loud. So what kind of gear do you need in order to get active on satellites? You can get started with just an HT and a handheld Yagi. All you need really are radios that can transmit and receive on 2 meters and 70 centimeters. That can be a dedicated satellite radio like the ICOM 9700, or it can be 2 separate radios like I have here at home, which I will show you a picture of in a little bit. You need to make sure that you have antennas for 2 meters and 70 centimeters, preferably antennas with gain. You need a device called a diplexer. What a diplexer does is it splits the signal. It splits the 70 centimeter and the 2 meter signal, and you can use that device to isolate the transmit radio from your receive radio, so you don't overload the front end of your own receiver. This is commonly known as desense, and a diplexer will help avoid that. A lot of people refer to them as a duplexer. Duplexer versus diplexer, technically they are different devices, but common use of the term in the satellite community, people know them as duplexers. You also need to know when the satellites are going to be overhead, so you know when to tune in. There are plenty of satellite tracking apps available if you have a smartphone. If you don't have a smartphone, there are plenty of pieces of satellite tracking software or websites that you can use to tell when a satellite is going to be over your neck of the woods. Here's the picture that I have here is a very simple ham radio satellite station at K3RRR that he's got set up on a push-up mast sitting on his patio where he does all of his barbecuing. So That is a nice package that he has there, because it has both 2 meter and 70 centimeter antennas connected to it, and that has connected to a full-blown rotor that does both azimuth and elevation, and he has that computer controlled with a piece of software, so it automatically tracks the satellite as it goes overhead. But you don't need to have all of that gear in order to get on the satellites. In fact, you may already have some of the components that you need. If you have a DC to daylight radio, such as the ICOM 7000 or a Yaesu FT 818, and a 2 meter vertical or a Yagi, you can start hearing satellites today. So I'm going to run through a couple of examples of stations that I've used over the years to be active on various satellites. The first one that I'm showing is the absolute beginner minimalist station that you can possibly have. It's a single HT that does both 2 meters and 70 centimeters, and a handheld dual band Yagi called an Arrow. And that the Arrow antenna has 3 elements on 2 meters and 7 elements on 70 centimeters. And that provides about 8 to 10 dB gain on the satellites on both of those bands. It's a very effective antenna. This setup is extremely portable. I took this to London with me in 2018, and I made plenty of contacts with this in downtown London, sitting on top of a parking garage, and talked to stations via satellite in about 15 or 16 different countries throughout Europe. But it has a big advantage, big disadvantage rather. You are not able to hear yourself on the satellite's downlink as you are transmitting with this setup. This is operating in a style known as half duplex. Not being able to hear yourself on the satellite's downlink in real time is a big disadvantage, because you don't know if you're actually making it into the satellite or not. For FM satellites, this is a major problem, because you have several people that are trying to transmit at once and get access to the satellite. So if you can't hear the downlink in real time, you don't know if you're actually making it into the satellite. And that can be very, very frustrating. So this setup is a reasonable place to get started, but there is a major handicap in not being able to be full duplex and be able to hear yourself in real time on the satellite's downlink. So if you want to try this approach, you can, but know that you have a serious limitation to your ability with this setup. You can also operate satellites from home. This is the station that I've cobbled together using equipment that I've accrued over the years in my time in ham radio. So right now I'm using, for 2 meters, I'm using my ICOM 746 Pro, which is my main HF rig. It also has 6 and 2 meters built into it. And so I'm using that as my receive station. And then to transmit on 70 centimeters, I'm using my ICOM 706 Mark II-G, which I use in my car for all of my mobile and portable operating when I'm activating a park, for example, for parks on the air. My antennas are really simple. I use a 5-element 2-meter Yagi, a homebrew 2-meter Yagi that's fixed in a horizontal plane at about 20 or 25 feet or so. I have it on a rotor, and it rotates azimuth, but it does not rotate elevation. So it is fixed in the horizontal plane. And for my transmit antenna, I use one of the M² egg beater antennas, which is a great omnidirectional antenna that looks like an egg beater, and it works pretty well on transmit. But this station definitely has some limitations, and I purposefully am showing this to you to acknowledge the limitations that my station has, just so I can show you that even with limitations, you can still work satellites. So I'm not able to work every pass, and because the antenna that I have for 70 centimeters doesn't have a preamp attached to it, it's really, really deaf on 70 centimeters. So it's not a good antenna for me to listen on 70 centimeters. It works okay for transmit when I'm using satellites that have a 70 centimeter uplink and a 2-meter downlink, but I can't use satellites from home that have a 70 centimeter uplink and a 2-meter downlink. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm not able to access all of the satellites that are in orbit. I have real problems with receive on my 2-meter Yagi on some satellites because if the satellite gets too high up in the sky, because my antenna is in a fixed horizontal position, I can't track the satellite as it's going overhead. And sometimes I get a little fading on the satellite signal as it's passing overhead. So it's not an optimum station. There's plenty of gear for satellites that you can get that you'll hear every pass, and you'll be able to track it as the satellite goes overhead perfectly. But those stations cost a lot of money, and I don't have all that money. So I wanted to demonstrate what you could do at home with some gear that you may already have lying around. And finally, if you're going to go portable, this is pretty much the standard for satellite operators that enjoy going portable. This is my kit bag that I use whenever I'm doing major portable operations from rare grids. So I've got 2 Yaesu 817s in a camera bag that I picked up from Amazon. I've got a 9 amp hour lithium polymer battery that I use to power both radios. I have a duplexer that separates my transmit signal from my receive radio, so I don't overload the front end of my receive radio. And I've got a Heil headset. And all of that combined fits in the camera bag right in front of me. I've got a dual shoulder strap that I use to keep everything right in front of me. And both radios, I have full access to both radios. I can control my transmit and my receive frequencies perfectly. And in combination with the handheld dual band Yagi, I can access 95% of the satellite passes that I want to hit with that setup. This is a extremely compact, extremely effective 5-watt all mode full duplex satellite station. And there are many, many portable satellite operators who use this exact setup because it is extremely effective. And not to mention that if the satellites aren't overhead, you can use one of the radios and go set up at a park and operate QRPCW if you want to do that too. So how do you know when a satellite's overhead? There are various pieces of software that you can use to track the progress of a satellite. If you have a home station, there are satellite packages. The most common one for Windows-based machines is a program called SAT PC32 that is available at the AMSAT store. AMSAT is the Radio Amateur Satellite Corporation of America, and they are the primary promoter of satellite operating in the United States. And they are the organization that works hard to make sure that there are satellites orbiting overhead that ham radio operators can use. If you're a Mac user, there's a program called Mac Doppler that several Mac users I know are happy with. I'm not a Mac user, so I have no personal experience with that software, but I know that several Mac users are very happy with it. If you have a smartphone, there are plenty of smartphone apps that are available to track satellites with. The picture on the screen here is the app that I use on my iPhone called GoSat Watch. It is an extremely powerful program. It is not a free app, but it is extremely feature rich, and it keeps all of the information on the satellite's current position constantly updated for you. So no matter where you are, you always have the latest information on satellite passes overhead. If you're an Android user, AMSAT has a product called AMSAT Droid, which is a very effective satellite program. There's also a good satellite tracking program made by the website Heavens Above, and they track all kinds of satellites with their app, including the ISS and various Iridium satellites as well. So if you're interested in tracking other satellites, you can do that with the Heavens Above website and app. If you don't have the software or a smartphone, you can go to various websites. AMSAT has a text-based pass predictions page where you can punch in the specific satellite that you're looking for and your latitude and longitude or your grid square, and it will tell you when the satellite is going to be overhead. Or you can go to a website, n2yo.com, and that will provide information on hundreds, if not thousands of satellites that are in orbit, including all of the current amateur radio satellites. And you can get real-time information on where those satellites are located on n2yo.com. Any questions so far? Okay. So there are a couple of major points to keep in mind if you're interested in checking out satellite operation. The first we already touched on, which is operating in what is known as full duplex, which is the ability to hear yourself on the downlink in real time as you transmit. That is extremely helpful for FM satellites. If you're interested in getting in the linear satellites and doing sideband and CW, you have to be able to do full duplex. It is almost impossible to operate the linear satellites if you cannot hear yourself on the downlink. There are a few brave souls who have pulled it off, but I really don't recommend that you try. It is very, very difficult. A major component of satellite operating is dealing with the Doppler effect. Everybody, I assume, has heard or seen videos of a train whistle as it passes, how the whistle starts off very, very high, and then as it passes, the whistle's frequency decreases in pitch as it goes past. The same thing is in full bore for satellite operating as well. The Doppler effect, a satellite is a moving object. So as it passes overhead, you're going to have to adjust primarily your 70 centimeter frequency throughout the entire pass. If your satellite has a 70 centimeter uplink, that means you need to adjust your transmit frequency as the pass is going on. If the satellite has a 70 centimeter downlink, then you need to adjust your receive frequency as the pass is going on. I talk about the Doppler effect in more detail in some videos that I've produced on satellite operating for DX Engineering, and you can find those on the DX Engineering YouTube channel. Most of the FM satellites have a 67 hertz CTCSS tone. You're going to need to turn that on for your transmit radio. So if you don't turn that tone on when you're trying to access an FM satellite, you're not going to be able to get in. They turn on that tone to help weed out any interference from ground stations that may be on the same frequency as the satellite is passing overhead. Where you set up in doing a satellite pass is extremely important. Leafy trees and buildings and all kinds of other objects that can get in your way will definitely limit your performance on the satellite. A clear horizon is the best location. And the ideal location would be on top of a high hill with no trees and a great 360-degree view of the horizon. That would be the ideal setup for a satellite operator. Don't have too many hills here in central Illinois. I think you have a few more hills out in Pennsylvania and eastern Ohio. So you might have better luck with that than I do. But definitely you want as clear of a view of the horizon as possible when you're trying to communicate via satellite. And the cardinal rule of satellite operating is if you cannot hear the satellite, do not transmit. There are plenty of instances with newer satellite operators who are very excited, and understandably so. They want to hear themselves on the satellite. They want to get active on the satellites very quickly, and they'll start calling and trying to hear themselves on the satellite as it's passing overhead, but they have some sort of equipment issue, or there might be an issue with their antennas, or they're just brand new and they don't quite know what they're doing yet. Oftentimes, even though they can't hear themselves on the downlink, they're actually making it into the satellite and causing unintentional interference with people who can hear the satellite. So it's very important when you're starting off in satellite operating to get a good control of being able to receive the satellite well before you start to transmit. Once you can receive satellites effectively very regularly, then I would recommend you start working on being able to transmit through it. But be very, very careful to not transmit until you can hear the satellite regularly. Another great aspect of satellite operating is what is known as roving. If you are a VHF, UHF weak signal operator, you are familiar with roving through various grid squares during VHF contests that ARRL and CQ sponsors. Basically, the idea of roving is simply to transmit from a grid square that is not the one that you live in. So you take portable gear and you set up in various grid squares nearby, or you can take it with you on a business trip or on a vacation, or as we were talking about earlier, if you're going to the Caribbean or South America or Europe for a vacation, you can take it with you too, and you can be a rover in that regard as well. Some grids are exceptionally rare, even though it's all here in the United States. There are portions of the United States that don't have very many satellite operators in them and rely on rovers to take portable satellite gear to these grid squares and set up shop for a day or two or a week or what have you, and hand out that grid square on satellite. So it's kind of like being on a little mini de-expedition with the satellite community. If you go to a pretty rare grid square, you can get some pretty serious pileups going on. And of course, it's always nice to get out and see the country. And you know, if you have a little bit of wanderlust, it's a lot of fun to take your gear to different locales and set up shop. This is a photo of me back in 2017 when I was out for the Rocky Mountain Convention. And this is me set up on a hill in Wyoming in grid DN74. And if you look in the background, you can see Devil's Tower in the center left portion of that shot. So I'm actually standing on a hill that's taller than Devil's Tower. And the horizon at that location was fantastic. I had a great time operating from that location. So how do you know what grids are rare? Well, there is a very nice gentleman by the name of Paul, KE0PBR, Kilo Echo Zero Papa Bravo Radio, and he takes information from active satellite operators on a weekly basis. And every week he gets a list of all of the grid squares that the active satellite operators have talked to. And every week he publishes a map called the Grid Master Heat Map on Twitter. And this map shows a color-coded map of all 488 grid squares in the 48 contiguous United States, and it's color-coded by rarity. The green grids are very, very common. The red grids are very, very rare. And you can see, if you look up into Maine, you can see that there are a bunch of grids in Maine that are exceptionally rare. There are a lot of grids along the west coast, right on the shoreline. All of those grids are pretty rare as well. And then up in Montana and Idaho, there's some pretty rare grids as well. What you might be surprised in is if you look where you are located in eastern Ohio and western Pennsylvania, just 10-15 miles down the road to the east of you is grid square FN01. And according to the chart that I downloaded from December 12th, FN01 is pretty darn rare. Only 36% of the people who are active on satellites and sending in this information have made a contact with that grid. So you are sitting right next to a very rare grid square. And if you are interested in being rare DX on satellite, there would be a lot of people that would really like to talk to you. So if you have any interest in satellite operating, consider going portable and driving down the road about 10-15 miles and setting up shop in Fox Nancy 01. You would be a very popular station indeed. You can track the updates on this grid square map, the rarity map, by following Grid Master Heat on Twitter. I've got it there in the lower left-hand corner. So if you're on Twitter, follow Gridmaster Heat, and you can get weekly updates from them as to how this map is changing. So what's it like to be a rover? You might be familiar with Ruth Willett, KM4LAO. She was the 2018 Hiram Percy Maxim Award winner from ARRL. And she is an extremely active satellite operator in between going to college and doing co-op work for her degree. So she has turned to satellite operating and roving in particular to enjoy ham radio in the midst of an extremely busy schedule. And I've got an audio clip of her when she was out in Colorado earlier this month of her working right on the line between two different grid squares in a very, very remote part of southeastern Colorado. So I'm going to see if I can share my audio here, and we'll see if we can get this to where you can hear it. So bear with me here for just a moment. Can you hear that?
It's low volume.
Very low volume. Okay,
yep.
One moment, please. Is that any better?
No, still pretty low.
Okay, let me see what I can do here. Bear with me just a moment, folks. If I can increase that, try that. We'll go back up here. Okay. There we go. Let's try this again.
It's in the Zoom settings. That's the difference that Zoom always drives me crazy with too. To increase that volume output, you'd have to go to your Zoom settings and set the output from that site.
Where is that located, Tom?
That's where I got messed up with the echo, trying to redo that. If you go to the camera and you're not going to change the video, but you'll select settings. It'll take you to the settings place where you see the audio out, and it's the audio out from Zoom. Believe it or not, it's some kind of security thing that they have going on.
I see. So you go into your video, there's start video, there's an arrow up, click on that, and then that brings up, and then you click on the video settings. And once you get there, you get audio, and you can adjust the speaker volume. Is that correct?
That is correct, as I've been trying to do.
Okay, I tell you what, I'm gonna move on to the next slide, because I actually have a different I have a video clip that I can share that I know I can source the sound for that. So bear with me here for just a moment, and I will bring up a different clip for you to watch. This is the next clip that I'm going to show you is me operating from a grid in rural Illinois. I activated 12 grids in Illinois, Iowa, and Missouri over the summer. And this is a clip of me transmitting from the grid EN40 using one of the FM satellites with an HT and a dual band Yagi. So let me get that queued up for you here, and I will play that. So bear with me here.
KX9X, W4 to the XT. W4 to the XT, KX9X Rover. KX9X, November 8, India Uniform, Papa, Echo November 81. W4ZXT, you're in the log. N8IUP, KX9X Rover, Echo Nancy 40. KX9X, N6AJ, that's Michael 5. N6AJ, KX9X Rover, Echo Nancy 40. KX9X Whiskey 0, Nancy Bravo Charlie. 0 XC, KX9X Rover, Echo Nancy 40. KX9X WA, Lima Radio, Echo Mike 795. EO, WA. KX9X Whiskey 6 Alpha Alpha Echo Charlie Mike 98. Echo KX9X Rover Echo Nancy 40, okay? Thank you.
Okay, so that's an example of what it can be like on a Rove. You can get a quite a pileup going if you are operating from a rare location. So if you are an HF operator and you are familiar with say contest operation or DX operation, you can understand what it's like to have a pileup. In that particular pass, the satellite was overhead about 15 or 16 minutes, and I logged about 25 stations during that pass. So that's pretty good for a short duration FM satellite pass. Let me keep things going here. There we go. Yep. So yeah, about 25 contacts that I made at that location during a 15-minute satellite pass. So if you're interested in taking your first steps in satellites, I would strongly suggest just go ahead and monitor passes from your home station with whatever antenna that you currently have up and running for repeater work, for example. If you have a 2-meter vertical, go ahead and try listening to some of the FM satellites. AO91 is a very loud satellite, and you can monitor it on 145.880. The sideband satellites, you can monitor those if you have a 2-meter all mode rig. The CAS-4B pass, the CAS-4B satellite is quite loud, and you can monitor that between 145.915 and 145.935 upper sideband. And you can also listen for the CW beacon that it has on 145.910. You can also try the XW2A satellite, which is one of those Chinese XW series satellites that I mentioned earlier. And that's on, you can listen to the 20 kilohertz of bandwidth that it has on upper sideband on 145.665 to 145.685. And if you're going to be doing satellite passes, be sure to open up your squelch before the pass starts. That way you will hear the moment when the satellite pops up over the horizon, and you don't miss any of the pass whatsoever. So if you're interested in more satellite information other than what I've just touched on here very briefly, I know I've thrown a lot of information at you very quickly. You can always go to amsat.org, the Radio Amateur Satellite Corporation of America. They have a ton of information available on their website, including lots of material on just getting started and beginning information. There is an AMSAT Twitter meetup net on DMR. You can monitor it on Echolink as well. I've provided the information there on the screen. If you're interested, just write that down real fast, or take a snapshot of it before I close up the talk. I've written a series of blogs for onallbands.com on satellite operating and providing lots of information and tips and tricks on what you need to do to get started. I would also recommend that you get involved with Twitter if you are not. Most of the active satellite operators, especially the guys who go out and do roving and operate from multiple grid squares, they post their information on Twitter regularly, and there is a very, very welcoming, tight-knit community on Twitter for satellite operators. And again, if you're interested in finding out where the grids are and how needs for rare grids are changing over the course of time, follow Gridmaster Heat on Twitter for the latest grid map information. Paul, KE0PBR, is a very active satellite operator. He's the guy who controls the Gridmaster Heat map and the Twitter feed. He publishes a blog on WordPress and has a lot of great information on satellite operating there. I've published a document on best practices for getting involved with the FM satellites. So if you are new to FM satellite operating, I recommend that you Google that document. You can find it on the AMSAT website, but you can also Google it as well. Lots of solid information on good etiquette and best practices when you're on the FM satellites. And finally, I've been creating a series of satellite videos for DX Engineering over the last 2 or 3 months. So if you'd like to see video of me explaining some of these concepts in more detail, be sure to go over to the DX Engineering YouTube channel. You can watch 5 videos there in the series. I'm working on the 6th one as we speak, and hopefully I'll have that one to the folks at DX Engineering before Christmas. So that one should be up and running within probably a couple of weeks. So be sure to stay tuned for that as well. If there are any questions from the group, I would be happy to entertain them now. You can reach out to me after the meeting is over. You can follow me on Twitter. I post satellite related content on Twitter every single day. I'm really very interested in helping people get more involved with satellites and trying out this aspect of amateur radio. It is a tremendous amount of fun and I enjoy it very much. So if I can help you in any way, by all means, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to help. Do we have any questions? Is there anything I can answer for you?
So Sean, thanks very much for this presentation. It was excellent this evening. And we really appreciate you coming on and doing that. You know, it seems like satellites, you know, you hear the commercial world of satellites, this stuff has got to be expensive. Do you have to be a member of an organization to get access to these satellites?
No, you do not. These satellites are available to any licensed amateur, regardless of license class. I suppose if you're old school and you're still holding on to your novice class license, you couldn't access them then. But you don't have to be a member of ARRL. You don't have to be a member of AMSAT in order to use these satellites. These are open to any licensed radio amateur.
So, just so we have some sort of a ballpark. I mean, what's it cost to make a satellite and then get it up in the air?
A lot of money. The most recent batch of satellites that are in orbit now, as I described earlier, are known as CubeSats. And a lot of the CubeSats that are in orbit now are being funded by university research projects all around the world. And so they're dealing with university budgets from, say, their engineering departments or their physics departments. And they're launching satellites and getting a bit of a discount on the launch from NASA or SpaceX or other private satellite companies. But you're still talking, you know, millions of dollars in order to get these up and running. They get an educational break, and AMSAT and other satellite organizations worldwide have been able to negotiate piggybacking on satellites that are going up in orbit. So a university who creates a research-based CubeSat may be convinced to let the ham radio community put a satellite transponder or an FM repeater on one of their CubeSat projects. So that's how a lot of the satellites are currently being launched.
And so do you find the hardcore satellite enthusiasts, are they all members of AMSAT, or are some yes and some no?
No, it's a mixed bag. I mean, there are plenty of satellite operators who are very active that are not members of AMSAT. You know, I wish they were. AMSAT is the organization that is doing much of the legwork to get the satellites up in orbit in the first place. So, you know, every dollar that AMSAT gets pretty much goes towards getting the next satellite up in orbit, and they've got several projects already underway. And so, where does AMSAT, other than member dues, where do they get the thousands of dollars that it takes to do these things? There are a lot of, they apply for grants from various organizations, public and private. They do a lot of diplomacy and try to make themselves good neighbors and partner with some of these organizations and save some money on the launch. So there's an engineering side to AMSAT that produces the satellites and makes sure that they are technically sound and are going to function properly. And then there are a whole bunch of people on the ground that are working with other organizations to partner with them and get the satellites up in orbit. So during that pass that you showed, and the audio came through very well on that, by the way,
how the heck are you logging those stations just in rapid fire?
Well, that's a very good question. For me, I'm holding the HT in one hand and I'm holding my antenna in the other hand. And so unless I'm going to grow a third hand somehow, I record the pass. I actually use, I don't have it here, I'm sorry. I use a little digital recorder that's much smaller than an iPhone. And I just plug the audio, I take an audio splitter out of my HT. I've got I've got a set of headphones that I hear the satellite pass through my headphones. And then I've got another audio jack that runs to this digital recorder, and I can record the satellite pass as I am hearing it from my antenna. So I've got a local recording. It sounds just like the way I heard it on my headphones during the satellite pass. And then I will go back, listen to the recording, and log all of those contacts after the fact.
And then you load up those contacts on LOTW?
Correct. Logbook of the World is great for satellite operators because there's no domestic QSL bureau. So if you want to exchange QSL cards for your satellite contacts, you're going to be spending a fair amount of money for sending the card out and putting in a self-addressed stamped envelope to get the card back. Whereas Logbook of the World, there are some operators, myself included, that will upload their contacts immediately after a satellite passes over. So you can have instant confirmation of a satellite contact that you made.
So how many QSOs would you say, just a ballpark number, that you've made on satellites through your career?
Oh, good grief. So I got started in satellite operating in 2011. Thousands of contacts. And, I was talking about rovers earlier. I enjoy being a mobile station. I enjoy being a rover and going and activating various grids. I've transmitted from 62 different grid squares in the continental United States and 3 different grid squares in the Caribbean and London as well. So it's a lot of fun being the DX on the satellites. And as a matter of fact, I just last weekend, there was a station in Alaska who went on vacation to Hawaii, and I worked Hawaii last weekend for my 49th state. So I've almost worked all states. And
so what are you missing?
Alaska. So I got to talk to the guy who went on vacation and get a sked with this guy. So,
so that brings me to what was your most memorable QSO on a satellite? What was the one QSO that stuck out that said, this is beyond cool?
Wow. I would say when I was in Wyoming, I had a picture of my operation in Wyoming. I literally got off the plane in Wyoming, and my hosts picked me up, and I set up all of my satellite gear at the airport, which I don't really recommend that you do. But I set up all of my stuff in the parking lot at the airport. And from Wyoming, I talked to a station in Spain, which was about 7,800 kilometers away. And I was his last state for continental worked all states.
That's very cool.
Couldn't work Alaska and Hawaii, but he worked all the 48 states. So
I could just see, you get out a baggage claim, and, most people are looking to get to the hotel, find a nice cab. And you said, just take me to the highest place here on the airport. I have a job to do.
It's true. It's really true. And, in typical fashion, my plane was running late and I wasn't sure I was going to get everything set up, and I got everything set up with about, 10 minutes to spare. So that's fun.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. And thanks for sharing all your knowledge, Sean. I mean, you share it with other clubs. You shared it through ARRL, and now you're sharing it on all bands. And go to the blog, onallbands.com. Sean has done just tremendous work there, educating on satellite operations, and of course all the YouTube stuff you do, the stuff you've got on Twitter. And I got to ask this, Sean, are you on the satellites every day?
Not every day. most days, but not every day.
Okay.
But you know, it's funny, you know, it's just like, so, you know, I'm in the process of trying to talk with all 488 grids in the 48 contiguous states. There's an award for that. It's called the Gridmaster Award. And I just broke 300 a couple of weeks ago. So I'm more than halfway there. And there was a gentleman, Kilo Bravo 5, Fox Hotel Kilo, who has been transmitting from various rare grid squares in West Texas. And he was going to be on a grid from the middle of nowhere in West Texas. And the only opportunity I had to get him was at 6 o'clock this morning. So I got up early and, you know, work the DX, you know, you gotta go when the band's open. So
has anybody done that, all 488?
Oh, several people have done it.
Okay.
And the reason why they have done it is because of the rovers who take all of their equipment and set up shop in all of these grid squares. Clayton Coleman, Whiskey 5 Papa Fox Golf, has transmitted from over 225 grid squares in the continental United States.
So very tough grid squares are some of these down south and especially out west that are water grids.
Yeah. So obviously, if a grid is mostly water, it gets a little challenging. I don't know if you remember looking at that Gridmaster heat map that I had up, but there was this whole string of grids along the West Coast from Northern California all the way up through Washington, and all of them were like orange and red. They're all super rare. And the reason why is because, yes, there is, you know, a sliver of land in those grids, and there are cities in that part of the of land where those grids are, but there's a mountain range that's like 2 miles off the coast that is very, very tough to get past. And if you get up on top of the ridge, you're not in that rare grid anymore. So a lot of people have worked those rare grids up and down the coast there are a couple of ham radio operators who are actually on giant freighters, international freighter ships. And there are a couple of hams that are on those ships, and they've transmitted from those grids there. So, you know, you don't always need to be on land to get those grids. Sometimes you can be in a really big boat.
It sounds like this Gridmaster Award, which is what you're chasing, is the, you know, it's the top level of this thing, but that's wicked hard to do.
It is entirely dependent on somebody being willing to go to the middle of nowhere with satellite gear and put some of these grids on the map. I mean, some of them, you know, there's some portions of Montana and Eastern Oregon where, you know, there aren't that many people there, much less active ham radio operators, much less active ham radio operators who do satellite work. So, I mean, some of these grids are impossible to work unless somebody goes there.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. So I encourage all of you that are on with us tonight to ask any questions you have of Sean, KX9X. And again, thanks so much, Sean, for being here tonight.
No, you're welcome.
Any questions for Sean?
I just want to say thank you, Sean. And actually, I've got a cabin in FN01, so I'm going to have to get something set up.
Oh, man. If I can help you get anything set up, reach out to me, because you are in prime territory, buddy.
And my brother lives out in Montana, so I'm sure when we go out to visit him sometime, when all this stuff's over and we get traveling again, we'll get out there and maybe try some. We were just up in Maine this year, and some of those I was looking, that was all red and orange. So
yeah, the extreme northeastern corner of Maine is known as the potato field, colloquially among the satellite operators. And those are really hard grids to get to because there's snow and mud, and you've got 70-foot trees that interfere with the satellite's signals. And that is very difficult terrain for a satellite operator up there. That's why they're so rare.
Well, I like to hike, so we'll have to, that'll be something to do.
Oh, let me know if I can help.
We'll keep you posted.
Any other questions or comments for Sean?
Just that was fantastic, and thanking him also. I didn't know anything really about satellite operation till now.
Oh yeah, this is tremendous fun. It is loads of fun, and you can get started for, you know, a couple $100.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Sean? All right, Sean, thanks very much for being here. Again, it's KX9X@yahoo.com, right?
Yeah, I'm old fashioned. I haven't gotten the Gmail address yet. I've had the Yahoo address for 20 years.
That's okay. Old fashioned is just fine with us. And we were thrilled to have you here tonight. And we did record it, so we'll be able to allow others to view it. And we want to thank you for all you do for amateur radio. I know that you're fired up about satellites, but you also have significant impact in other areas of this hobby. And I know I speak for thousands of radio amateurs. Thank you so much for all you do to give back.
Thanks, Tim. You know, that was what was taught to me. You know, somebody took the time to teach me all this stuff. So now it's my turn to give it back. Yeah.
So we wish you good luck. Can't wait to see you in person. Hopefully that's going to happen next year as we put 2020 in the SK list and just say, you know,
yes, please.
It was just a year that we all had a lot of challenges, but you know, what a tremendous hobby amateur radio is for a lot of reasons. But during a pandemic, you know, this is social distance at its finest.
Mm-hmm. It really is. I mean, you know, for I've seen a couple of memes on social media that for you know, for ham radio operators, not a whole lot has changed. We're still stuck in our shacks talking to people that we can't see.
Right. And and we still have some of the best friends in the world, and
right.
It will come back, and we will be able to get together, and you know, but during this time, it's been an incredible ride for those of us who have this hobby, and certainly we're very excited about the new people that are getting licensed, and so thankful for our VE team, Linda and Mike and Alex and Barney and Tom and Marty and all the people that Bill, KB3 TBT, that give her their time as VEs to I mean, Mike has been so innovative getting people licensed out at the park, in Barney's office, at the park in between, you know, breakfast and dinners. So that flexibility has allowed new people to come into the hobby and experience what the magic that you showed tonight. And so one of these times, Sean, when things come back to normal, we'd love to have you out here, and you and Corey can go out to FN01 and have a real field day. Corey is a great guy for doing that. He's wicked smart, and there's a good reason he's the DX Engineering Manufacturing Manager. And so we might not hear from you guys for 3 or 4 days, but I think you'll make a lot of people happy with QSOs from a rare grid.
You'll hear from us every day if you get on the satellites.
There you go. All right. Last chance for any questions for Sean, KX9X. Well, Sean, Merry Christmas to you. Happy New Year. Thanks for being here. And thanks to all of you for coming tonight, whether you're a member or a guest. We are very proud of the Mercer County Amateur Radio Club, and come back in January of 2021. We're going to have another set of great speakers for our Elmer session at 6 o'clock and our speaker at 7:30. This is what we do. This is a first-class organization, and so very proud to have all of you as members and guests. So come on back in January. Stay tuned to the website, w3lif.org. Sign up for the bulletin, get on the reflector, and we're going to make 2021 a better year. So 73 and Merry Christmas.
73, everybody. Thanks for having me.
You can stay on Zoom and talk amongst yourselves for as long as you want. I see the steel man coming and